obviously mixed martial arts finally going to go to New York, right? And you got a guy in Conor McGregor where
now we're talking.
You're not only involved in being a pioneer in this sport, you're also a pioneer of guys. Hey, wait a minute. You want to make the real money, you got to generate some interest. You got to sell some tickets. You got to make sure people want to watch you. And nobody had ever done that as well as you have. And now we're seeing some fighters really try their best, right? You wrote a book, people are reading it, and they're trying to follow it. What advice would you give him at this point? You know, you saw him in New York. He did a pretty good job. You know, he's got to move forward now. He's got to continue to come up with new stuff. What advice would you give to Conor if you were advising him?
Okay, Conor's got to put somebody over, and he can pick a guy, and it can be from a different generation. It could be from right now. It could be a different weight class. It could be his weight class, but he has to put somebody over. Psychologically, when you're telling the fans, I'm the greatest, and everybody else sucks, at some point you're going to lose them. He just needs to pick a guy. Grab a Carlos Condit, grab just somebody random. Again, doesn't even have to be somebody that he could ever match up with, and then admit, I admire that guy. I think if it becomes too much of a shtick, and it is a shtick, and I ended up in his spot too, and I like the organic stuff like what you and I are doing right now. You have no idea what's coming at you, you hit the ball and you move forward, but when you're tasked with as much media as he is, and I used to have to be in that seat, all of a sudden, man, you're coming in, it's gimmicky. I was doing poems at some point. It was fun. They were getting great clicks. People cared about them, but at the same time, it's not organic. It's scripted, and it's not real. If Conor wants to keep the audience psychologically, he's got to at some point level with them. So, there was really nothing more endearing for Conor as a fan than when Diaz kicked his ass and Conor immediately went to the press conference, all banged up, beat up, tipped his hand to Diaz, did interviews, said, man, this one is really tough. I didn't see this. He hurt me. He surprised me. He got me exhausted. When he came out and he was really real, once you get him in, then you can always go back to the character. But he's got to put someone over. At some point, he just does, or it becomes too much of a shtick. That would be my one, and maybe only, Brian, maybe my only piece of advice. People need to learn and steal from Conor much more than critique him, but that's the one area where he could really bring more people in, is just a little bit more honesty.
I'm listening to this, Chael, and the advice is so good. And everyone knows, your IQ is extremely high. You're very smart. You're also a smart businessman. You understand this industry. If a job running an organization doesn't materialize for you, have you ever thought of potentially managing fighters? Could you imagine, when you think of the other managers out there, we know there's no barrier to entry, so there's some ones that aren't that good, right?
Sure.
Have you ever thought about doing that? Because you'd be phenomenal at advising these guys through their career.
That has crossed my mind, and I work with some young guys, and I do use my Rolodex and lean on, whether it's Coker or it's Dana or it's Ray Seth. I do use that to try to elevate them, but never from a business standpoint where I've taken a cut, let's say. And the management industry, to your point, it is wide open. I've got some great ones I think are the best in MMA Inc. Rob Ravita had a great reputation, but he ended up leaving it and got into real estate himself. Ed Soros, very solid. But that space, Alex Davis, very good, bringing guys over from Brazil all the time. That space is limited. The mere fact that I just name-dropped Malky, every single manager that I know, and I've been in this for 20 years, I only know 5 guys. There is a major opportunity for somebody to come in. What hurt the managers, Brian, according to fellow managers, and it even got fighters mad at them and cutting and going and doing their own thing, was the loss of the sponsorships. A lot of fighters just looked at it and goes, look, if you can't get me sponsors, I can deal with Joe Silver, Dana White. I can get that contract, and if you can't move those numbers, then what do I need you for? Now, I didn't agree with that. And in my spot where I got a little podcast, a little ESPN thing going, it was important that I had managers that could keep all of that in line to make sure I hadn't promised exclusivity somewhere or a date somewhere else, to make sure that I stayed in compliance. And I did watch a lot of guys get mad, but there is ways to maneuver around this game. And if you were to do a straight line, who is the best fighter in the world, it's not Michael Bisping. And I'm a big Michael Bisping fan, but it's not. He doesn't match up that well with Jacare. He matches up terribly with Weidman. He doesn't match up that well with Rockhold, even though he beat him. Romero. But if you do a tournament format and you put these guys into a bracket, you can see a path to victory. And Michael Bisping found it. And then Michael Bisping defended it. And Michael Bisping is getting ready, at least for the opportunity, to defend it again. And there are ways if you study the sport and the history of, there are ways to fast-track lines, to maneuver the system. There are ways to do it, and guys really do need a manager that they listen to. The problem with fighters is they don't want to write that damn check. They make a deal, and they don't want to write the check. Well, if you don't write the check, you're not going to have those managers for very long. You're going to get a bad reputation. So I have thought about doing that. I don't think it's very realistic, but I do use my Rolodex to try to help some of my up-and-coming teammates when I can.
And you just, what you said right there gives any fighter a reason to want to write your media relations, your vision. You see this sport, you see it in slow motion where other guys, it comes at them super fast, especially once they win a couple fights and they start becoming a little bit of a star. You've got the answer, so that's very impressive. Now, you mentioned your show, You're Welcome. Talk to me a little bit about that. Now, obviously, I can't imagine people that are listening to me on SiriusXM don't already subscribe to your show. But just in case they don't and they're missing out, tell them where they can subscribe and how often you're putting that out there.
Well, I'm 3 times a week on iTunes. If they just go one time and click the subscribe button, every time the show drops, it will just come straight to their smartphone. You could always go to a desktop if you live in the olden days, as we say. But yeah, man, that's really it. I'm going to get all my fans. They're going to be listening to your show, and I'm going to steal a few of yours, and we're going to go back and forth. I love that this thing's growing. People don't know, but you didn't ask me to be on your show. I went to you and said, hey, Brian, is there an opportunity? Because I know how big your base is, and I know how good you are, and I fully plan to steal some of your listeners, but I'm going to be giving you some right back, my friend. It's going to be mutual.
I've got no issues with that, and I would love it. Anytime you have the invitation, I would love to come on Your Welcome, and we could definitely dive even more into politics and anything else you want to go into. Chael, you are, as always, the best guest anybody can get out there, the best guy on the mic, man. Thank you so much. Really looking forward to your Bellator debut as well, man.